I think we're on Facebook Live and we're showing our slides. So good evening. My name is Don Ficken. I'm with the Library Telescope Program Task Force. We are joining you once again. We had several programs last year, almost all the year. We had a monthly program on the Library Telescope and astronomy, and we're glad to be back. We took a break over November, December. Tonight's program is 2023's most fascinating events, as seen with the help of the Library Telescope, with John Goss from the Astronomical League. Before we get started, I'd like to talk just a moment about the Library Telescope program. This program's been around, I think, since 2008. If you have a library or in your area, public libraries, or sometimes a school, they have often telescopes and binoculars for checkout. This program has grown quite a bit. We are tracking some 800, actually almost 900 locations and 6-something countries now, everything from North America to Europe. And now we've just added New Zealand on there that I'm aware of. So it's something, if your library does not have it, you might want to check it out. If they do, this is a good time to check out a telescope. Our task force, we've been around for several years. Tom Lynch, who's on here, he's the guru behind the Facebook page. He's been doing a terrific job of getting something like almost 5,000 followers, which I think is coming very soon. He's got a lot of active posts. We have a task force that gets together once a month. We try to grow the program and share best practices. And we've got a pretty robust website. You can literally look on the world map, click on your state or province or country if it's highlighted in blue, and you can find out where we know of, at least, that there's a telescope or maybe binoculars for checkout, like a book. We also have a lot of resources for patrons to get started, and for libraries on how they might begin the program or even do simple things like maintenance. One of our, John Goss here, in fact, tonight has been providing us each month with really cool monthly sky charts, both in English and Spanish. And you can, we actually post those to their Facebook page, facebook.com/library telescope, and also on the front page of our telescope website, which is librarytelescope.org. So check that out. He's got usually not only just the star charts, but some fun other charts of some things of interest. Tonight's program is January 18th. Obviously, tonight is our 2023's most fascinating events. But we have a program every month. The next month's program will be partnering with a library to launch a library telescope program. So quite often, you might find that it's difficult to convince your library to start the program for whatever reason. And so one of the members who had that challenge, he tackled that challenge. He's going to talk about his practices. So the program tonight is being recorded. It's obviously being streamed to Facebook Live right now and Zoom, but on the next couple of days, we'll put us on YouTube. We've got an entire library. You can see some of the things we've had in the past, but we've been doing this for a couple of years. We got all kinds of topics, everything from 3D printing to things about light polluted skies, hosting libraries, star parties, and things like that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Goss, who will start the program on 2023 most fascinating events. So we will be taking questions. And so what I ask you to do is post your questions if you're on Facebook to the comments area. We'll be monitoring those. And if you're on Zoom, just put those in the Q&A area. We'll do what we can to pick those up at the end of the program. We'd like to get to the program first, and then we'll take the questions. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and let John get his program started, and we'll go from there.
Okay, great. Thank you, Don. I will start sharing here momentarily. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight on this pretty special program for the Library Telescope. I'd like to start out by saying that when I talk about the Library Telescope program, I see it as a win-win-win-win situation. You know, the library patron wins, the library system itself wins, the astronomy club that sponsors all this stuff wins, amateur astronomy and just science in general wins. You know, it's a big deal. It's a good thing for libraries to do. So tonight we're going to be talking about in my opinion, the best of 2023 sky events. I started this a number of years ago through the Roanoke Times and now Earth Sky. So some of this material which I'm presenting has already been done through them, but here it is all together. Let me start out by saying, for many months of the year, this is just coincidence, but by many months of the year, the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of those nights features an interesting moon event. You know, the moon orbits the Earth once a month. Well, so if you get something happening on a certain period of the month, it's probably going to follow that many months to come. Also, Venus and Jupiter and Saturn will be featured at various times of year. Venus will be late in the spring and early summer, Jupiter in the fall, and Saturn in the late summer and fall. We'll be talking a little bit more about Venus, especially in just a minute. So let's go on to see what we got here. As I was saying, January 23rd, January 22nd, both those days, evenings, have something pretty interesting to look at in the sky. If you look over into the southwest shortly after sunset, let's say 45 minutes after sunset, you'll see bright Venus, and you'll see another little object, or a dimmer object next to it, and that's Saturn. This is one good way of learning how some of these other objects look like. Venus is easy to find, Saturn not so easy, but it's right there, so Venus points the way. And this is a great object to look at through the library telescope. Later on, a week later or so, the moon approaches Mars. It's a 1 day after first quarter moon, and some parts of the United States, the moon actually comes directly in front of Mars. Most parts, or other parts of the United States, it just passes below. Where I live on the East Coast, we're not going to see the moon cross in front of Mars, but it'll drop just below it. Best time to look at this would be about 1 a.m. Hey, unfortunately, a lot of astronomical events happen in the middle of the night, but this is about 1 a.m. on January 31st. But if you're up late on the 30th, the moon will still be very close to Mars. So that'll be an interesting sight to see. A little bit after that, around March 1st, you got Venus and Jupiter approaching each other. In fact, throughout the month of February, in fact, from now on until March 1st, watch Venus and Jupiter approach each other in the southwest or west-southwest shortly after sunset. You will see that they're getting closer and closer together in the sky. Until March 1st, they'll be right smack next to each other. You have your library telescope pointed at these two planets, and they'll both be in the same field of view at the same time. I think that's a pretty interesting sight to see. Also, later on in April, here, April 22nd, again, the 21st and 22nd, you have the moon low in the west shortly after sunset, and it'll be close to the Pleiades star cluster, which is a pretty interesting star cluster to look at through the library telescope. It's easy to see with the unaided eye, and through the telescope, you will see 80 stars. The field is full of stars. Very, very, very pretty to see. So mark that on your calendar, April 21st and 22nd. Now we're getting into something which I like to slow down the discussion a little bit here. In June and July, it's a great time to see Venus. And you can see it for a number of reasons. In early June, it approaches what we call the Beehive star cluster, and that's where Mars is. Mars on June 1st and 2nd will be right next to the Beehive. The library telescope will show the planet Mars and sitting in front of a bunch of stars. Very, very pretty. Let me explain a little bit about what's going on with Venus. Tonight, you can see down at the bottom of the screen, the slide, you got the Earth positioned respectively in its orbit about here, Venus up here, and we got the sun. So as the nights go on, the months continue, Earth and Venus will both go around the sun. In, let's say, 5.5 months from now, something like that, the Earth will have moved around quite far to almost the other side of its orbit. Venus will have chugged around about 3/4 around its orbit, and Earth will be here and Venus will be there. At this period, Venus will be its farthest distance from the sun in the sky, so it'd be easy to see in the western sky after sunset. And if you have a telescope, it will look like this. You'll have a kind of a half-phase Venus on about June 3rd. Another month and a half later, Earth will chug along in its orbit until about July 26th. Venus again will move a little bit faster, a little bit further in its orbit to July 26th. Now you have Venus as a very thin crescent and quite a bit larger in apparent diameter than it was on June 3rd and what it is tonight. That's because, as you can see from our diagram, Earth and Venus are getting closer together. So of course, Venus is going to appear a little bit bigger and brighter in the sky. This is a great time to look at Venus from June, all through June and all through July. This is the time to look at Venus, especially through the Library telescope. It'll give a great sight. Another illustration of it on June 3rd, Venus is about 50% illuminated, okay, half Venus. July 9th, about 25%. The 26th, about 10%. So, one more tip on this, which people laugh when I tell them this, that Venus is really pretty bright. If you have if the Library telescope comes with a moon port, some do, some don't, use it for Venus as well. It dims the view a little bit and it won't be so glaringly bright. Or wear sunglasses. Kind of funny, but there you are with sunglasses looking at Venus. It's you look pretty cool doing it. So as I was saying earlier about Mars moving in front of the Beehive, well, that's on June 1st and 2nd. Well, Venus does the same thing 2 weeks later, a week and a half later, on June 12th and 13th. So you won't have any trouble finding the Beehive with Venus, because Venus is easy to see. Look on the 12th and the 13th with the Library telescope, and you'll see the bright, glaring Venus sliding above the many stars of the Beehive star cluster. That is an interesting sight to see. Continuing on into Jupiter, you will notice that we have Venus, of course, I was just saying, but Mars is also in the scene. So Venus can help point out where Mars is in the sky. You know, sometimes Mars is very noticeable, but when it gets to June, it starts dimming down quite a bit, and it may not be so apparent in the sky as it is tonight. Venus will point it out for you again in June. Venus is easy to see. Also, you have another star called Regulus, well, not another star, but a star called Regulus, which is the brightest star in the constellation Leo. Mars and Venus approach it in June. And on the night of the 21st, you have really pretty sight in the west. Remember what I said on the 21st of the month, something happens. Well, there's your crescent moon shining right next to brilliant Venus, and you got Mars and Regulus. That'll be an interesting sight to see. July, almost every month has something going on. Let me kind of give it a side here. When I was first putting this program together, the problem I had was trying to narrow things down, because really there's just about something going on all the time. So what's good, what's bad, what's better than this? Well, here we are in July 21st. There we are again, July 20th and 21st. You got a whole bunch of things in the sky. Look in the west, and of course you see bright Venus, and there you got Mars and the moon. But you also have Mercury enter the scene, which is it's a challenge object because it's so low in the sky, but it is interesting to see. So put that on the calendar too, July 20th and 21st. What's coming up next? There, August 24th. The moon occults Antares. Now that's a fancy word, occult. All it means is that the moon passes in front of Antares, and Antares is the brightest star in the constellation Scorpius. It'll be fairly easy to see, but you're going to have to look about 10:30 or so at night. This is Eastern time. But you can see it in Midwest and the West Coast as well. But it's 10:30 Eastern time. Look towards the southwest of the sky, where the moon is, and Antares is the name of the star right next to the moon. And if you happen to be in the lucky spot, you'll see the moon go right in front of the star. Pretty interesting to see, especially through the Library telescope. Okay, now let's look at the morning sky in the fall, October, November, and December. October 10th and November 9th, December 9th. You have Venus meeting up with the crescent moon again. This time Venus is on the other side of the sun, and so it's in the morning sky. October 10th, it's about 42% illuminated. So it's a big fat crescent at that point. Then November 9th, it's 59% illuminated, which just means it's a little bit more than halfway full. And December 9th, 71% illuminated. So that's a lot of sightings for Venus. So by the end of the year, you're either going to like Venus or you're going to hate it because it's always there. But it's the easiest thing in the sky next to the moon, so it's something to think about. Okay, I'd like to talk about one more issue here, which isn't really the best, but in a way it kind of is. As I was saying, that there was the difficulty in putting this program together is choosing what makes the cut, what doesn't. Well, there's a facet of amateur astronomy which the Library Telescope does fairly well at, and it is observing many double stars. It's a lot of stars in the sky are not just one star, but there are two stars orbiting each other fairly closely, and this telescope can pick them out. With the Astronomical League, the organization I represent, is doing, or is beginning to do, is to have a monthly double star challenge. A view of a double star through a small telescope, such as the Library Telescope. And the February double star challenge will be Castor. Castor is the brightest star, or the second brightest star in the constellation Gemini, and it's really pretty easy to find. I think a lot of people know about Orion, where it is in the night sky. Well, in February, it's standing right in front of you in the south, shortly after sunset. Let's say an hour or two after sunset. Well, you take Orion and go to its upper left to the northeast, and you'll bump right into Castor, and you'll see it. It's not hard to find. Point the telescope at it, and you will see two. Let's see if I can enlarge this. No, I guess I can't. Two stars right smack next to each other. But we intend on doing this every month for a little challenge, for something to do with trying to introduce people into amateur astronomy. And one way of doing it is to show them or have them find objects which are pretty interesting to look at. And some of these are double stars. So we're going to start doing that next month. Now on that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dawn and see if there are any questions, any comments. Would you like to discuss something here? Stop my share, I guess. There we go.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Actually, we have a question from Facebook.
All right.
And it's about, can we see the Neanderthal comet, which I think is C2022 from Southwest Virginia, and where to look?
Southwest Virginia. Well, that's where I live.
There you go.
Very good. Well, okay. Yes, you can, and no, you can't sometimes. For right now, you have several issues. One is the moon. Right now, the moon is not a problem. The problem right now is that it's fairly north, far north in the sky. It's still brightening. It's not a naked eye object yet, but it's getting close. If you knew right where to look with the Library Telescope, you could, but it's kind of hard to tell you where to point it if you can't really see it with the naked eye. Now, in another week and a half, it'll probably have brightened sufficiently that you will be able to see it with the naked eye, but you have the brightness of the moon to worry about. So maybe late at night, in another 10 nights, you might be able to find it. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'll be looking forward to.
Okay. See, do you see any more questions, Tom, right now at all?
No, I don't see any at all yet. No.
So, John, while we've got you here, let me
Sure.
see if I can bring this up. Let's talk about your sky chart, because you're talking about really some cool stuff every month. Let's see if I can actually share my screen here.
Right. Yeah, we can go over some of these objects with it, because as I was saying, what makes the cut, what doesn't. Well,
so here's is this the correct chart?
There we go.
There you
okay.
go.
Well, remember, I was just talking about Orion, and if you look towards the south, kind of a third of the way up, you'll see the constellation Orion with its bright stars Rigel and Betelgeuse. That's a good spot to start learning stuff in the sky, because it's a pretty dominant constellation, which is 6-7 stars, which are pretty easy to see, and you can use those stars to navigate to other things in the sky. Before I do that, though, also Orion has the Orion Nebula, which if you want to talk about the best things in the night sky, well, that would make it. That makes it every year. That makes it every January and every February. It's a really cool thing to look at with the library telescope. And people say, nah, what, what's so great about the library telescope? Well, I'll tell you one really good thing about this telescope is that it has a wide field of view. The Orion Nebula, which is a star-forming region, has it's a wispy clouds of gas and dust and a bunch of stars within it. It's really fairly large in the sky. It's larger than the full moon, the apparent size of the full moon. So if you can find it in a telescope, it fills up a pretty big area. Well, the library telescope has a nice wide field of view. Perfect for viewing the Orion Nebula. Even though the telescope isn't extremely large, it's certainly large enough to see this. So yeah, I can go on and on about this.
Yeah.
But so you got Orion. You can use Orion to find different things in the sky, which is what all these numbers are with arrows pointed to various directions. So you can see interesting things: the Pleiades star cluster, the double cluster, M44, which is another name for the Beehive, which I was just talking about with Mars and Venus this summer. A number of really cool things. Plus the Milky Way itself. I think people who aren't familiar with what the Milky Way looks like are astonished when they have a view of it through a telescope. Some people think it's not that big of a deal, but if you look at the Milky Way through the library telescope, you will see many stars. Because that's our galaxy. Our galaxy has 200 billion stars. Well, that's some of them in the night sky right there. So the library telescope is pretty good for looking at things like that, things that have a nice wide field of view. Okay. Does that work for?
Yeah. So I don't know, Tom, if you see any more questions right now, but I know that whenever we do library programs, obviously we love to look at the moon. That's one of the easiest targets to see, obviously, if it's up, and of course Venus. But those double stars, they can be a lot of fun. If you take this map that you have, it can show you some pretty nice objects. And I guess many of these objects also would be pretty good for binoculars, not just telescopes, right?
Oh, correct. Well, I have the Pleiades star cluster listed next to letter A, and a pair of binoculars right there. That's a great thing to look at through binoculars. It's a very large, wide field star cluster, and if you with a library telescope, it fills up the whole field. Lots of stars, and binoculars are great for looking at that. There are a number of items on here which are given letters. E down below Sirius, which is towards the lower left-hand side of the chart. E is a star cluster called M41, which is another nice looking cluster, not nearly as good as the Pleiades, but it's still easily picked up through binoculars and the library telescope. Go up to the upper right to letter C. You have something called M31, and that's what astronomers call the Andromeda Galaxy. Believe it or not, this is something that binoculars and the library telescope can pick up rather nicely. A nice elongated glow in the sky. You go, well, what is that? And it looks pretty interesting through a small telescope or a pair of binoculars. There are other things, constellations. Well, okay, on this map, you can see where Jupiter is in the sky. And the moon. This program is being done on January 18th. Well, in 1 week from now, on January 25th, the moon will be right next to Jupiter. So you got 2 for 1 there almost. With the moon, you can easily see craters on the moon. Some of it's mountain ranges, it's plains, very fascinating stuff. But right next to it will be Jupiter, seeing the planet itself and 4 of its large moons. Pretty easy to see through a telescope. The size of the library telescope. It's a great little instrument. So if you get your hands on one, go outside and use it. That's what it's there for.
So John, the telescope, the library telescope specifically has a zoom lens, right? So there are different powers. Do you recommend one power over the other? In other words, it goes from
Well,
8 millimeter to 24 millimeters, right? So which one should you use for this stuff?
right. Yeah, it does have a zoom lens on purpose. It was designed that way. And as Don just said, it goes from with the 8 millimeters to 20. And that really means that it goes from well, zooming up, it starts out at 20 power and you go up to 60 power. The 20 power is very useful because that's its widest field of view. So it's easy to find things in the sky at 20 power.
Right.
And there are objects in the sky which don't need much magnification. Orion Nebula is one of them. Pleiades is another one.
Right.
And then you zoom in, go up to 60 power to really bring in detail, get closer to an object. So I was mentioning Castor, the double star. You would want to use high. It's 60 power for that. You want to zoom in on the moon to get a better view of craters. That's great. And so you have the ease of just with the turn of a wrist going in and out, zooming in and out. It's very handy to do that. That's one of the advantages of this system that's been designed for the telescope.
Yeah, so to recap, if you're looking at something with a lot of stars, in other words, a wide field, you want a low magnification. In other words, is that right? You want to put it on 24, right? In other words, and if you want to look at something really close, like a double star and split it, you want highly magnified so you can see those stars split as well as you can. Is that right?
Absolutely. You start out at the lower power. Lower power is an inverse to what the millimeter, the focal length in millimeters of the eyepiece. So if it says 8 millimeters versus 20, well, 20 may seem like it's the higher power, but it's not. It's the lower power, which we can get into that later at another time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the lower power you have, the wider field you have, the easier it is to find something. And then you zoom into the higher power to actually bring out more detail.
So John, I don't see any more questions, but I do want to ask you one more question.
Sure.
So is this map good for 6 months?
Well, no. This map is we issued a new one every month. This is really good for a month. And another week from now, we're going to be issuing the February map. As the Earth goes around the sun, it sees a different set of stars as it goes around the sun. So these constellations and stars that we see on this map will be positioned a little bit differently than in February and in March and so on. So we have to have a new map each month.
Right. And particularly, you can't use the same one from last year for the same month because the planets have changed, right? But the stars, for the most part, like the same.
That's right. The planets will be quite different from last January and for next January, but the stars are going to be the same. Orion's going to be in the same spot. The star Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, is going to be in the same spot. The Andromeda Galaxy is going to be in the same area, and so on. So yeah, the planets will be moving, the moon will be moving, but the stars will all be the same every January. And I'll tell you this, one thing about observing the night sky is that every January, these stars are going to be there. So if you have a favorite constellation like Orion, it's somewhat comforting to know that every January, without fail, Orion's going to be there. And so you kind of have these friends in the sky. You're out doing something, you look up and you see the constellation Orion, and you think, yep, happy January. Thank you, Orion.
And if you're really impatient, it's my understanding that if you get up really early in the morning, you can see the next season of stars. Is that right?
Yes. As the night goes on, all the stars move from east to west, just like the sun does during the day. The sun rises in the east and moves across to the west and sets there. The stars do the same thing. The moon does the same thing. The planets do the same thing. So if you get up after midnight, go out after midnight or get up at 5 a.m., you'll see a different set of stars out because these stars shown on the map will have moved over to the west as they were setting, and they go away, and then a new set of stars come up popping above the eastern horizon. So you'll see a different set early in the morning.
Okay, well, thank you, John. Hey, Tom, is there anything going on Facebook, the group I should know about? Anything exciting happening? I know you're pretty busy out there posting back and forth with a lot of great interaction.
Yeah, we've did a kind of a boost trying to get more people to attend to the page, and we've gotten a lot of Canadians.
Hmm.
I haven't seen too many Canadians in the past, but we're getting lots and lots of Canadians liking the Facebook page. On a weekly basis, I usually on Monday I'll do a some sort of an article about astronomy. Tuesday is library telescope. Seeing what a library that has one, a little bit of information about it. Wednesday I change the pictures, and Thursday I show additional videos and such. So yeah, there's a lot on there, and there's a lot of stuff there that's for different people. It's for like a brand new person to astronomy. It shows a lot of basic things. I share a lot of the Astronomical League flyers, and this what John was just talking about, this January night sky. I'll post that every month, and then other flyers as well. Lots and lots of information. And I draw from a lot of places, so it's kind of a good place for somebody who's new to astronomy and wants to get into it a little bit. It just, rather than finding these things in lots of different places, I kind of pull it all in one place and put in a lot of variety of stuff too.
So Tom, I'm looking at the Facebook stats. You guys might make history tonight. We're at 4,996 followers right now. So we can be over the bump before we even log off tonight. But I would like to thank John Goss. Thank you so much. You've done this last
Oh,
year,
you're welcome.
this year,
You're
and
welcome.
it's been terrific. And by the way, thank you so much every month for sharing your maps. They're both in
You're welcome.
English and Spanish, and you've got some other great stuff out there. So Tom, thanks again for doing your work on Facebook. So we will, this is being recorded, we will trim this recording out, and we'll get it out here in the next couple of days. Check out our YouTube library, and you guys have a great 2023. We'll see you back next month. I guess it's looks like it's Valentine's Day, February 14th, to learn how to partner with a library. So we'll see you then. All right. Thanks everybody so much. Have a great evening.